All right, welcome back, everyone. If you're anything like us, I bet you've been glued to the Cricket Champions Trophy.
Definitely glued.
Yeah, and things are getting really interesting, especially for India. They've had some stellar performances so far, really dominant run. What have you been thinking?
Oh, absolutely. The wins against Bangladesh and Pakistan, those are some serious statements.
I know. Such strong performances. And the individual players, too. We've got to talk about Shami's five-wicket
It's
haul,
classic.
right? And Gill getting a century, just classic stuff. Oh, and of course, Kohli's back in top form. Another century.
It really is remarkable. Their batting, their bowling, everything is so balanced right now. It's great to see.
Yeah, they're looking really strong. But now the question is, who will they face in those semifinals? We know India's sitting pretty in Group A, but Group B, well, that's a whole other puzzle.
It is a bit of a tangled web over there in Group B. Australia's already picked up their spot, which is a bit surprising.
Well, they've had some luck, let's just say that.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Their performance hasn't been exactly convincing, though.
Agreed. So let's break it down. Looking ahead, there are three teams India could potentially be up against in the semis. Afghanistan, South Africa, or even a rematch with those Aussies. So let's start with scenario number one, India versus Afghanistan.
Okay, so this one is definitely possible, but it'd require a pretty unique set of results. First things first, India has to beat New Zealand in their next match.
Which, given their form, they absolutely could.
Right, but here's where it gets a little tricky. For this scenario to happen, England would have to absolutely crush South Africa.
Crush them, huh?
Yeah, we're talking either a win by a huge margin, like over 207 runs, or if they chase, they'd have to do it insanely fast, something like 173 runs in under 15 overs.
Whoa, I don't know about that. England's batting hasn't exactly been on fire this tournament.
That's true. It's statistically unlikely to happen.
Yeah, I'm not holding my breath. All right, so let's move on then. What about scenario number two? India versus South Africa.
Okay, so this one is much more straightforward and probably the most likely. South Africa just needs to avoid a total disaster against England. Any result except a massive loss paves the way for an India-South Africa semifinal.
Okay, so even if New Zealand pulls off an upset and beats India, it doesn't matter as long as South Africa doesn't completely crumble against England.
Exactly. That's right. Based on the current standings and the remaining matches, that's the most plausible outcome.
All right, so that's scenario two down. Now for the matchup I think everyone's secretly hoping for. India versus Australia, round two. Tell me the cricketing gods have a plan for us to see this rematch.
Oh, they might. They just might. And there are a couple of ways it could happen. So one way is if New Zealand beats India and England also wins their match.
Okay, so England has to win either way.
Right. But the other way is if India wins against New Zealand, but South Africa wins against England.
Ah, so it all comes down to those England and South Africa matches. So much riding on them.
Oh, absolutely. Whoever wins those games will directly decide who India faces in the semifinals. But I have to admit, that prospect of seeing India and Australia go head-to-head again, it's definitely got that extra excitement factor, doesn't it?
I know, it's the Clash of the Titans. Everyone loves a good rivalry. But it's not just about the excitement, right? What are the actual stakes for India in each of these potential matchups? What does it mean for their chances in the tournament?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. I mean, each team, they each pose a different kind of challenge to India, right?
Right, so let's break it down, starting with Afghanistan. They're kind of the underdogs here, but we've seen them pull off some pretty incredible wins in this tournament. What do you think, what kind of threat would they actually pose to India?
I'd say their spin attack is definitely something to watch out for.
The Denners, yeah.
Yeah, they've got some serious talent there. Rashid Khan, especially. He's world class. On a good day, he can dismantle any batting lineup, and we've seen glimpses of that already in the tournament.
So India's batsmen would need to be on their toes.
Oh, for sure. But, looking back at their head-to-head, India's actually been pretty dominant against Afghanistan in recent matches.
That's true.
India has a lot of batting depth, and they're pretty experienced in handling good spin bowling.
Right, they've got their own spin stars too.
Yeah.
Jadeja, Ashwin.
Exactly. And those guys could definitely exploit some weaknesses in Afghanistan's batting.
So it wouldn't be a walk in the park, but you'd say India would likely be the favorites if they met Afghanistan.
Yeah, I think so. Based on the stats and the strategy, yeah.
Okay, so Afghanistan, check. But now South Africa. That's where things get really interesting, I think.
Definitely more interesting. South Africa's always been a tough opponent for India at these ICC tournaments.
I know, right? You look back at the history between these two teams, so many intense matches, close finishes.
So much history there.
Yeah, some real nail-biters.
Exactly. And you can't forget about their pace attack. I mean, they're arguably the best in the whole tournament.
Rabada and Norche. Those guys are scary good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They can bowl so fast and with so much movement. Even the best batsmen have trouble against them. You remember the 2015 World Cup semifinal? India really struggled against that same attack.
Ugh, don't remind me. That was a tough one to swallow.
Mhm.
But India's batting lineup is different now, right? Rohit, Rahul, Kohli, they've all proven they can handle pace.
True, but India's top order hasn't looked completely invincible against good swing bowling in this tournament.
Yeah, you're right. If Rabada and Norche are on their game.
It could be a long day for the Indian batsmen.
Yeah. Okay, so what's the key for India then? See off the new ball and then target South Africa's middle order. They're a little inexperienced, aren't they?
Exactly. Whether that's storm early on and then India's batting depth, plus their own spin attack, they could really become big factors.
It's a classic battle then, South Africa's pace versus India's spin.
Exactly. A classic matchup. But there's also the psychological side of things, right?
Oh, right, the mental game.
Yeah, South Africa's had the upper hand against India in recent ICC tournaments.
That's true. They've got that mental edge.
So for India, it's not just about the skills, it's about breaking through that mental barrier, you know?
So, South Africa, definitely a challenge. All right, so now let's talk about the big one, the matchup everyone's waiting for. India versus Australia. Round 2, the rematch.
This is the one everyone wants to see, right? Such a classic rivalry, so much history, so much passion. It's always a good match.
Oh, always. And this is how I think it's even more interesting because both teams have their strengths, but also their weaknesses.
Absolutely. Like Australia, their batting lineup is amazing, right? Warner, Smith, Maxwell, they can just demolish any bowling attack.
But of course of nature.
But their bowling hasn't been super consistent.
Yeah.
Could that be India's chance?
Yeah, you think?
They really rely on Cummins and Stark. If India can get them out early, it puts pressure on the rest of the bowling attack.
Which is less experience, right?
Definitely. So that could be an advantage for India. But you can't forget about Australia's batting depth.
Right. Even if they lose a few wickets early, they always seem to find a way back.
Exactly. Guys like Marsh and Head, they can be just as dangerous as the top order. Australia is a resilient team, you know? They don't give up easily.
So for India, it's all about bowling with discipline, keeping the pressure on, not letting them get settled.
Exactly. Can't give them an inch. It's a battle of attrition, a test of nerves for both sides.
And there's that psychological aspect again, right? The intensity of this rivalry.
Oh, the pressure is immense when these two teams meet. It's not just about skill, it's about who can handle the pressure, who can rise to the occasion in those crucial moments.
So 3 very different opponents. Each one presents a different challenge. We've talked about their strengths and weaknesses, potential strategies. But from a purely cricketing perspective, what do you think would be the most intriguing matchup for India? Which opponent would really push them to their limits, bring out the best in them?
That's a tough one. All 3 would be amazing to watch. For me, if I had to pick one, the most interesting, the one that would really push India, would have to be South Africa.
I think I agree with you. To face that South African pace attack on a bouncy track, that would really test India's batting.
Exactly.
And then there's the mental side of things. They've got to overcome those past defeats.
It adds another layer to it, doesn't it?
It does. And we've seen that India can be vulnerable against really good swing bowling. And South Africa, well, they have the best swing bowlers in the tournament, probably. So India would have to be at the top of their game.
Technically and mentally, yeah. It'd force them to adapt, to think on their feet, to show some real grit.
And South Africa's batting, it might not be as explosive as Australia's, but it's still strong. So India's bowlers will have their work cut out for them, too.
Oh, yeah, they can't let their guard down for a second.
So a real clash of styles, then.
Definitely. A battle of attrition. A real test of character for both sides.
And that's what makes it so exciting to watch.
Couldn't agree more. Full of twists and turns, strategic battles, moments of brilliance. The kind of match you remember forever.
Well, we'll have to see how those Group B matches play out first. England versus South Africa, that's happening today, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be a tense one.
Oh, definitely. Every run will matter. And then, of course, India's match against New Zealand on Sunday.
That's a good one. Everything's coming down to the wire now.
The anticipation is killing me. This is what we love about tournament cricket, isn't it? The excitement, the tension, the unpredictable nature of it all. Just brilliant.
I know. It's been great breaking down these scenarios with you. I'm even more excited for the next matches now.
Me too. And to everyone listening, we want to know what you think. Who do you think would be the most exciting opponent for India in those semifinals? Let us know your predictions. Until next time, enjoy the cricket.